An angry Donald Trump vows to appeal his criminal conviction one day after a New York jury finds him guilty of falsifying business records. First Ticketmaster, now Ticketek. Customer details in danger after another data breach. Flight disruptions across the country after a fuel supply issue at Perth Airport. And Queensland fossils providing new clues to how climate change may impact existing species. Good evening, Ellen Fanning with ABC News. Donald Trump has railed against his historic conviction in a rambling 30-minute tirade, blasting the judge, President Joe Biden and his political rivals. Speaking on his first day as a convicted felon, Trump vowed to appeal, claiming, without evidence, to be the victim of a conspiracy. Condemned as reckless by the White House, the fiery response has fuelled a record number of donations to his campaign.
Thank you very much, everybody. And I very much appreciate the big crowd of people outside. That's incredible what's happening.
A convicted felon, but no contrition.
If they can do this to me, they can do this to anyone. But the judge allowed them to go into everything that I was ever involved in. Was he a bad boy here? Was he a bad boy there? The judge was a tyrant. So we're going to be appealing this scam.
Outside Trump Tower, the country's polarisation on display 5 months out from the election.
Trump is a disgrace.
You are a disgrace.
My country's been turned upside down.
Free Trump! Free Trump! Free Trump! Free Trump! Free.
He's free for now, but jail time is a possibility as Justice Juan Merchan decides what punishment Donald Trump deserves for his crimes and for flouting the judge's orders by attacking star witness Michael Cohen.
Now, I'm not allowed to use his name because of the gag order. But, you know, he's a sleazebag. Everybody knows that.
He could get some form of incarceration. That could be house arrest. That could be weekends in jail. Or it could be up to 4 years in a state prison.
After mostly avoiding commentary during Trump's trial, his Democrat rival decided to weigh in.
It's reckless. It's dangerous. It's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict.
Now Trump trades the courtroom for the campaign trail. It's too soon to say if the guilty verdict will sway anyone's vote, but it does appear to have prompted some to open their wallets. Trump's campaign claims that they raised nearly $60 million in the 10 hours after the verdict. A Republican record and a boon for a campaign lagging behind Joe Biden's fundraising.
Money will help, but Donald Trump will be pushing against the tides of history to be elected to the highest office as a convicted criminal. Carrington Clark, ABC News, New York, New York.
China's military has confronted Australia's Defence Minister during an international security conference in Singapore. Richard Marles was calling out Beijing for acts of aggression in the region.
Just north of Australia, regional tensions are boiling over in a very public forum.
If a Filipino citizen is killed by a willful act, that is, I think, very, very close to what we define as an act of war.
The Philippines president warning of dangerous consequences if Chinese militia vessels continue to challenge his nation's territorial waters.
The Philippines, their ship intentionally to collide with China's Coast Guard ships.
At the annual Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, the actions of the People's Liberation Army in this region is again dominating discussion.
The harassment that the Philippines has faced is dangerous, pure and simple.
The United States assuring allies and partners it will continue to uphold international law.
The United States can be secure only if Asia is secure.
Australia's Defence Minister also taking aim at Beijing.
The activities that the Australian Defence Forces conducted in the region for decades, safely and consistent with international law, are increasingly contested by the PLA.
Rising tensions contested from the conference floor, with the People's Liberation Army confronting Richard Marles with this.
As a sovereign country, China has the natural rights to defend its national security.
After the conference confrontation, Mr Miles met with his Chinese counterpart. He raised the matter face to face. While the Albanese government continues to voice concern over China's military posture in the Indo-Pacific, here, federal police are defending their past cooperation with Beijing after revelations on Four Corners that Chinese officers were allowed into Australia back in 2019 to escort a suspect out of the country.
I think it's fair to say what would have been appropriate 5 or 10 years ago, given the current environment, may not be appropriate today, and we've recognised that.
The AFP says its awareness of foreign interference plots has improved significantly. Monty Bovill, ABC News, Canberra.
A major rescue operation is underway in Sydney for a woman believed to be trapped in a collapsed townhouse. 5 people have been treated in hospital after a huge explosion at the property in Sydney's west. Officers say they've heard tapping noises coming from beneath the rubble. Rescue teams are working as quickly as possible but say it's a delicate operation. 2 other women and a pet dog were pulled from the collapsed home, all with minor injuries. The blast, which blew out nearby windows, was felt several kilometres away.
I heard a massive explosion. I raced outside thinking someone had put a 5-bomb on a veranda or something, and 3 of my windows were they're all smashed out, 3 of them.
First it was Ticketmaster, now Ticketek, caught up in a cyber security incident. Ticketek has disclosed a potential data breach, warning customers their details might have been accessed.
Ticketek customers trusted their private information would be kept safe.
I do book tickets, but this is the first time that I have heard from a Ticketek email advising that there was a breach.
Names, dates of birth and email addresses of Ticketek customers have been potentially accessed by cyber criminals. The owner of rival platform Ticketmaster has confirmed to authorities it detected a data breach almost 2 weeks ago, but its customers have been kept in the dark.
It's just very disconcerting that I've had no news about exactly what has happened.
The National Coordinator of Cybersecurity has been working together with Ticketmaster and Ticketek to make sure that we're completely across what has happened.
Both companies have blamed a third-party cloud-based storage provider which holds the information. One such provider, called Snowflake, recently disclosed it had been hit by cyber attacks.
We don't know for sure that these incidents are related, but on the balance of probabilities, they likely are.
The hacking group Shiny Hunters claims to have demanded $20 million from Ticketmaster.
As Ticketmaster presumably refused to pay that, they are now selling the data for $500,000 USD.
Many companies do pay hackers. With more than $1 billion in ransoms believed to have been paid last year alone, cybercrime has become hugely profitable. It's prompted calls for ransom payments to be banned.
The fact that organisations do pay is why attacks like this keep on happening.
Ticketek is urging its customers to be extra vigilant for phishing emails and scam attempts. Alexander Lewis, ABC News.
There's been chaos at airports across the country today with a fuel supply issue in Perth, leaving domestic and international travellers stranded. More than 70 flights were affected, and while the problem has been fixed, the airlines are still working to clear the backlog.
We're currently experiencing a fuel delivery issue to aircraft.
Frustration around the country as flights in and out of Perth ground to a halt.
Captains ringing in every hour saying, don't know where the fuel is, but eventually we just get kicked off the airplane and then our flight's been cancelled.
In Sydney, this man was trying to get home to Perth after his son's baseball tournament in Lismore. He's now facing a roundabout trip home through Melbourne.
Just delays it. I don't know. Would have liked to be home tonight.
And there were flow-on effects elsewhere as passengers missed connecting flights.
Well, I'm not too happy about it because I had to be in Perth tonight to make it to Singapore for another flight.
International flights were forced to divert to regional airports, leaving passengers stuck on the tarmac, including those on this 17-hour direct flight from London to Perth, which ended up refuelling in the mining town of Karratha in WA's north. Hours later, the airport announced the problem was fixed.
We appear to have had air has been sucked into the distribution system. Even once we identified the fix, it then was about a period of time for us to bleed that air out.
But delays are expected to continue throughout the weekend, with many passengers told they can't be rebooked for days.
somebody is responsible for what is happening, and there should be something done to help the passengers.
There's been some confusion over compensation, with Virgin Australia initially telling passengers they were not eligible. However, a spokeswoman later corrected this, saying passengers could apply if they weren't being booked forward on future flights. Other passengers stranded in Perth were told they wouldn't be given hotel accommodation, leaving some to face an extended wait at the airport. Rebecca Trigger, ABC News.
The cost of taking the Brisbane Air train has been slashed in another pre-election cost of living sweetener. Currently, tickets cost up to $22 each way, but from August that will be halved for a 6-month period. In 2012, the Newman government sold the rail line to a UK university's pension scheme in a deal which isn't due to expire until 2036. The government says at $10 million, the half-price trial is much cheaper than breaking the commercial contract.
We really do have a dud deal that we have to make the most of. We are miles apart on what we value the AirTrain contract at and what the overseas owners value it at.
US President Joe Biden is hopeful there will be a ceasefire in the war between Israel and Hamas by Monday. Mr Biden has detailed a 3-phase deal proposed by Israel, which he says would also secure the release of all remaining hostages. Hamas has yet to respond.
A potential ceasefire for the people of Gaza, announced in Washington.
It's time for this war to end. For the day after to begin.
The leader of Israel's most powerful ally says the war has achieved what it needed to.
At this point, Hamas no longer is capable of carrying out another October 7th. It's one of Israel's main objectives in this war, and quite frankly, a righteous one.
According to Joe Biden, the proposal has 3 phases. An initial ceasefire with some hostages released and Israel withdrawing from populated areas of Gaza, followed by a permanent ceasefire, Israel's complete withdrawal and all hostages returned. The third stage would be reconstruction. Israel confirmed it's authorised a proposal, but said its war can't end until all objectives were met. It didn't detail exactly what it's proposed. Hamas, which pulled out of negotiations this week, says it's ready to deal positively with a permanent ceasefire proposal. While Joe Biden walks a fine line under increasing political pressure over America's support for Israel, congressional leaders have invited Benjamin Netanyahu to give an address in a show of support. It's not clear how much negotiating might be ahead to reach a ceasefire deal. The day after this war, still somewhere on the horizon. Emily Gromens, ABC News.
The United Nations has renewed its push to get more aid into Gaza, saying 4 in 5 children are going without food for days at a time. Medical evacuations have also stopped despite a growing need for urgent transport. And a warning, this report contains distressing images.
10-year-old Lama has a gaping hole in her leg that needs urgent medical attention.
I was sitting at home with my brothers and suddenly a tank missile hit our garden. I got injured. My brothers, my aunt, uncle and sister killed.
But inside Gaza, she can't get the treatment she needs. She was given permission to leave through the Rafah crossing. Then Israel closed the border after seizing it in early May.
I was about to go out that day. They told me the tanks are inside the border.
The Rafah crossing was the only way injured Gazans were able to leave. 20-year-old Abdel Karim was also given the green light to be medically evacuated. His entire family, apart from his brother, was killed in an Israeli airstrike on their home. Every day, the risk of needing amputation grows.
My injured leg is getting worse. I feel like I am wasting time, sitting here waiting for the worst.
UN agencies say at least 700 critically injured patients have been unable to leave Gaza since Rafah closed. Gazan doctors know there's little they can do with their collapsed resources.
These patients are deteriorating and will get even worse. I pray to God they will open the border.
Israel hasn't responded to questions about future plans for the crossing or any medical evacuations. Alison Horn, ABC News, Jerusalem.
Germany has joined the United States in allowing Ukraine to use their weapons to target Russian military targets. The move comes after heavy bombardment in the country's northeast.
Sleeping residents wake to a Russian missile in the dead of the night.
It's a terrible situation because Russian aggressors have hit a residential building.
They're the latest casualties in Moscow's new offensive towards Ukraine's northeastern city of Kharkiv near the Russian border. So far, 11,000 residents have been evacuated. Until now, Ukrainian forces have been hamstrung in their response, restricted from firing US weapons into Russian territory. President Joe Biden has now lifted the ban, allowing troops to use its weapons to fire back in that front of the war.
Going forward, we'll continue to do what we've been doing, which is, as necessary, adapt and adjust.
America was worried easing restrictions could escalate tensions with the Kremlin. Vladimir Putin has warned it could cause a global conflict. But without the change in policy, Ukraine was struggling to keep Russian troops at bay. On the sidelines of a NATO security meeting in Prague, the alliance chief dismissed the threats.
Self-defense is not escalation.
The news broke as the Ukrainian president was in Stockholm, signing a new security pact with Sweden.
I think that using any weapon, Western kind of weapon, on the territory of Russia, it's the question of time.
The Ukrainian people can count on continued strong Nordic support.
America's decision, though, comes with strings attached, limiting how deep inside Russia Ukraine can strike. But as Moscow's forces edge closer, those defending their city will take whatever they can get. Catherine Diss, ABC News.
Social media and smartphones are often blamed for damaging mental health, especially when it comes to teenagers. It's even led the federal government to consider a crackdown on young people's access to the platforms. But a closer look at the science reveals a much murkier picture. The ABC's national technology reporter Angela Boispierre has this special report.
On a 10-degree morning in Charleville, 18-year-old Geordie is serving coffee to a sleepy town. Charleville is its own world. But in Geordie's pocket, there's another.
It's like a second world, really. Like, you have reality and then you have social media, like two extremely different things. I'm on it 5.5 hours a day. So it's a lot less than what it used to be. For me, it was going...
In high school, Geordie's daily screen time peaked at 7 or 8 hours, mostly on TikTok and Snapchat. And there's a reason she cut back.
Things like growing up, I've always been a bigger girl. Just seeing stuff on social media and thinking, oh, like, am I not good enough? Do I have to look like that?
There was also around-the-clock bullying.
A group of boys at my school had tagged me in a TikTok telling me to go kill myself. So yeah, that for me, it was just so heartbreaking.
And still, putting down the phone felt impossible.
It was like that fear of missing out, I guess. You have to be on social media to know everything.
What does social media do to your mental health?
Honestly, it's kind of depressing because you're just like consuming, like I think because I know I'm consuming just mindless shit.
This content is distracting, mesmerizing.
Just scrolling and look at the time and realize it's been 5 hours.
I got rid of Snapchat, Instagram, everything, TikTok.
I think it makes me feel happy because I can socialize with my friends and watch funny videos.
It'll make you insecure, it'll make you want more. Always wanting more is not always better. It can ruin you.
Teen mental health has deteriorated in the last 2 decades.
There's a lot of questions that parents have about this.
Dr. Elisa Werner-Seidler is researching how tech affects young people's mental health.
What we know about the link is there's a link, and that's pretty much what we know.
In other words, more screen time might be causing worse mental health, or it might be the other way around. Thousands of researchers around the world are trying to find the answer by focusing on how teenagers spend their time online. Because doom-scrolling perfect bodies on TikTok might not be the same as connecting with friends via a game or chat.
It matters what people do and how they do it and how long for and with whom.
Of course, there is already a wealth of data on the subject. It's just not in the hands of researchers.
The big tech companies have all of this information. If they were to share it with academics and scientists, we would be able to learn so much more quickly.
All the major platforms have safety policies in place designed to protect young people. Parental controls, avenues to report inappropriate content and seek help, customisable settings and age limits, even if they're rarely enforced. It's their way of trying to undo the perception that social media companies routinely put profit ahead of safety.
These companies are infamous for ignoring their own internal research on risks.
Reset Tech is an internet research group that wants to see tougher rules for social media companies, especially when it comes to the dangers of the technology itself. A key law, the Online Safety Act, is currently up for review.
I've never seen the appetite as strong as it is right now for government to legislate in this domain.
Geordie is all for stronger rules. More so now than when her mum forced her to cut back her screen time last year.
I'm thankful every day that my mum did what she did.
If you had a big switch and you could switch off social media, not just for yourself, but for everyone, would you do it?
I think I would, because there is so much more to this world, even if it was for a week, just so people could have that taste of what it would be like without social media.
And if you or someone you know is experiencing distress or depression, please contact Lifeline 13 11 14 or get in touch via their website. Blues debutant Dylan Edwards is under an injury cloud for Wednesday's Origin opener. After finishing today's training session with a sore quad, it's prompted an SOS call from coach Michael Maguire to the Roosters to keep James Tedesco on standby.
A chilly start in the Blue Mountains for the Blues and a concern for their new fullback. Dylan Edwards trained today but then felt tightness in his quad after the session. A decision will be made tomorrow morning before James Tedesco plays the Cowboys. Meanwhile, Nico Hines has shaken off his calf concern.
He's ready to go. Did a lot of kicking the other day and yeah, it looks like there's nothing wrong with him, so he's sweet.
So too Liam Martin, who's also had a disrupted camp so far with a glute injury on limited training earlier in the week at the request of physios.
They just sort of worked out a plan just to sort of ease into the week, and by the back end of the week I should be firing, so yeah, it's feeling great, so I'm ready to go.
In Queensland, Harry Grant's now back to full health after being quarantined from teammates earlier in the camp.
It's just yeah, a little bit crook in the tummy, and speaking to a few of the boys, they've had a bit of a bug over the last couple of weeks. It's been going around a bit.
In the NRL, the Bulldogs were without their Blues stars but weren't phased in Newcastle last night.
Another try scored out of desperation and effort.
Despite playing with 12 men twice, the Bulldogs outscored the Knights 32-12 to jump into the NRL's top 8.
Just speaking to a few guys around the club, in the dressing room there, they said that's the toughest win they've seen in a long time.
Jacob Saifidi was handed a $3,000 fine for this headbutt with just a minute to go in the tryless match for the Knights.
Disappointed, bad night. Yeah, it's a hard one to swallow.
Jessica Stewart, ABC News.
The Matildas have escaped disaster with a last-gasp goal to secure a 1-1 draw against China. The visitors put Australia under pressure in the first half, with Zhang Linyan opening the scoring in the international friendly. Veteran Michelle Heyman equalised in stoppage time to avoid a loss in front of a packed crowd at Adelaide Oval. The coach experimented with fringe players as he looks to whittle down the squad for Paris.
Without saying any names, I think there were 1 or 2 players that locked the spots tonight. To be honest, there will be some tough conversations that's going to hurt some feelings, unfortunately, and that's the tough part of this job.
In tennis, move over John McEnroe. Russian 6th seed Andrei Rublev has had a spectacular meltdown to exit the French Open, while other top seeds sailed through to the next round at Roland Garros. World number 2 Jannik Sinner enjoyed a straight sets win in his third round match, and Polish top seed Iga Świątek celebrated her 23rd birthday, easing into the last 16. Rublev, however, had a number of moments he'd rather forget, getting into a heated argument with the umpire over a line call and losing his cool on several occasions as he went down in straight sets to Italian Matteo Arnaldi.
Completely disappointed with myself, the way I behaved, the way I performed.
And finally in the news, who are you calling a fossil? Marsupials, lions, Tasmanian tigers and giant koalas all roamed central Queensland thousands of years ago. Now their remains could hold the key to understanding how climate change may impact existing species.
Tiny fossils painting a prehistoric picture. The Capricorn Caves were once part of a barrier reef, but over 400 million years it transformed into a rainforest and became home for some of Australia's most peculiar wildlife.
Dozens of species of animals, from tiny little ringtail possums up to gigantic megafauna. These included land-dwelling crocodiles, giant koalas, giant possums, tree kangaroos.
This bone deposit here is actually quite a unique bone deposit. It's the only faunal record for rainforest species for this time period in Australia.
Scientists are keen to learn more, with these recent discoveries teaching how the climate has changed over time.
It's one of the most important sites in Australia because it actually tracks past climatic changes that impacted rainforests. It's the only site of its kind in Australia.
These changes are an indication of what's coming next.
Because if we know how they adapted to major changes in the past, we can use that to help us predict what's going to happen with global warming currently.
Explorers first stumbled across the caves in the 1880s, and since then it's not only been a playground for paleontologists, but for punters to make their own discoveries.
You can only really find them in caves like this. It's just a really cool preservation environment.
Around 40,000 visitors from around the globe come here each year.
I'm from New Zealand and just having a look around this part of Queensland, and everybody told me you have to check out the caves.
And with only 5% of the site explored, there is still a lot to learn.
Just today, as I was getting prepared for this interview, I found a tooth that I can't even identify yet.
Freya Jetson, ABC News, The Caves.
Time for weather now with Jacqui McLaren, and we're in winter, Jacqui.
We are, Ellen, and it seems some Queenslanders woke up early to catch the first day of the season, while others were simply chasing clouds and others were chasing footballs. Good evening, Queensland, and thanks everyone for the photos. Well, it was a sunny day in the southwest, but the thick cloud band really dominated most of the state, bringing some patchy showers with it. And we did see some isolated falls closer to the borders overnight, 33 millimetres recorded just south of Charleville. Taking a look at today's temperatures now, and we saw minimums 4 to 12 degrees above average under that thick cloud band. Still chilly in Birdsville though, just 8 degrees overnight. And Brisbane hit its peak at a cool 22 degrees. Right now it's 21. On to the satellite, and the focus is certainly on that impressive cloud band stretching from the Northern Territory through central parts all the way to New Zealand. And there is a severe weather warning for the corner of Western Australia where all that thick cloud is. So an unsettled 19 on the way for Perth tomorrow, mostly fine and sunny for central capitals though. On to the chart, and we can really see the story. We've got the trough lingering over eastern states, and we could actually see this develop into a coastal low within the next 24 hours. Meanwhile, back home, we can expect light to moderate showers overnight, but the good news is from tomorrow morning, that trough moves offshore with a ridge of high pressure following behind it. So we've got clear skies coming our way and cool nights and cool days. Checking forecasts now, and mostly settled in the north with a current strong wind warning for parts of the Gulf. 24 24 degrees for Rockhampton. Inland, some cloud about and patchy rain, but it will be clear and sunny in the day. It's 17 for Thargomindah. A similar story in the southeast, some morning fog, but a mostly fine day on the way for you. In Brisbane, it'll be a beautiful day after the rain moves out, 23 degrees. And checking the bay now, winds 15 knots, seas around 1 metre. Sunrise will be at 6:30 in the morning. And looking ahead, a bit of cloud here and there, but Ellen, it does look like we're in for a sunny start to the winter season.
Best time of the year, and that is ABC News to this moment. Thank you so much for joining us. You can stay up to date on our website. But for all the team here in Brisbane, from Jacqui and I, thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful night. Good night to you.